Welcome to this new lesson. In this new lesson, we will show how we are going to create a dialogue with the model. So to do that, let's go to Visual Studio Code. In the controllers, I will create a new controller. I will call it ChatGPT Clone controller.js. So first we include the configuration that will make OpenAI initialized and ready for us to use. Then let's create the function. So this is our function, generate chat completion. Okay, let's go ahead and export this function. Then we go inside the function generate chat completing, which, as you can see, it takes the messages array or list as an argument. So we'll expect that the caller will figure out the messages list that will be sent to this model. Okay, let's now do the API call. So in this OpenAI, we will call the create chat completion. Of course, it is a wait because it takes time, so we need to wait for it, and that's why the function is async. Then we specify the model name, so we'll specify GPT 3.5 Turbo, which is the same model used by ChatGPT. Okay, then we will pass the messages list, which is passed to our function with a key of messages. Then we will pass the temperature. The temperature value we'll set is 0.7, so it is more deterministic than the default, because the default is 1, so this is a little bit more deterministic. Okay, now let's get the response and print it. So this is the response object, data, choices, message, and content. So this is our function almost ready. Let's go to the playground and start working with it. So here we will first require the read line because we are getting the prompt from the user. Then we import the OpenAI configuration file. Then we create the read line object. We do create interface. We need to specify 2 parameters. The first parameter is the input, which is the standard input, which is the keyboard. Then we specify the output, which is the process standard output, which is the console here down. Then we will request the input from the user. So we pass a read line, a question. This is the question. And the other parameter we will add shortly, which is a function that will be called when the user enters the prompt, and the prompt will be passed to us in this anonymous function. So here is this anonymous function. You can see in this function we are passed the value that the user entered in the keyboard. Then we will initialize the system role. Here in the system role content, you reply as concisely as possible. Then we create the messages list. In this messages list, we specify 2 JavaScript objects. The first object is the system role. We pass the content system role content. So this sets up the behavior of the chatbot by specifying the role as system and specifying the content. Then we specify the value entered by the user. So the role is user, and this is the value which was passed to us in this function. And finally, we call our API with the messages object. Now I will try to invoke the function and see the returned value. Okay, so I'll start it here in Node, playground. It's asking us to enter a prompt. What is the capital of France? And that's it. It generated the response. So it made this call. It then went to this function and printed this. Okay, now let's comment this out. And instead, we will return the content value from the response object. So that's our controller pretty much done. Now we will need to show you how to create a dialog which preserve history using this function. Okay, let me now clear everything here except the import of the generate chat completion API that we just created. Then we need a function that prints a line just for formatting of the output. So I'm creating this function print line. The output is empty. I will add to it equal signs in a loop that will print 50 equal signs and then print a new line, and before the line also put a new line. Then I will create a new function to create the chat with history. So I will call it perform chat completion with history. Again, it is asynchronous because it's going to use the await keyword, and then I just invoke it. Now, inside the function, I am going to define 3 questions. From the 3 questions, the first one, what are the healthiest foods to eat every day? Q2, make a recipe with those foods, and notice that this depends, Q2 depends on Q1. And what is the amount of kilocalories in it, which again depends on the recipe on Q2. So we have Q1, Q2 or question 2 that is depending on question 1, and the question 3, Q3, which is dependent on question 1 and question 2. Now let me define the system role. So the system role, you reply as concisely as. Then I define the messages list, and inside it I specify the system role. So the key is role, the value is system, and then the system role, which is this role. Then I specify the user role, which is this question number 1. Okay, then let's call our function from the controller. So generate chat completion, take the messages as parameter, and because it is async and it takes time, then we will stick a promise. To do that, we use the then function, and we pass in an anonymous function which passes the response back from the generate chat completion call. Okay, let's now console log this response that we got from the bot. Let's now try and check this function. Okay, now I will stop this. I will start it again. So it is making the call. Some of the healthiest food to eat are these. So it responded to us. So far things are working fine. Okay, then I will store the response in bot response 1. You will know later why. Then I will print a new line. Then I will create the messages list. I will specify the same system role. Okay, I then add the user role. Okay, now I will call the API for the new messages list. And as you see here, I am calling the function, passing the messages to it. It is asynchronous, so I am attaching then a block and passing to this block an anonymous function that will be called when this method returns. Now I will just print this output. Okay, so first we will be launching the question Q1, then we will be launching question Q2. Remind you, question Q2, make a recipe with these foods, which are the foods in Q1, which I am referring to. Okay, so as you can see, the first question, it responded with some of the healthy foods because we are asking what are the healthiest food. Then we are asking it, make a recipe with these food. Now what it's telling us, to make a recipe, I would need to know the specific foods you are referring to. Could you please provide a list of the foods you would like to use? Although we have asked him in question 1, and the foods are known in question 1, but as you can see, it doesn't remember the history. So Q2 was a completely new question which was answered in a negative manner because he didn't know the foods that we are looking for. Ideally, we would like it to remember Q1 or Q1 answer, and from Q1 answer to generate the recipe for us in Q2. Okay, let me now store the response, input response number 2, and imprint a line. Now I will do the same thing. I will call the generate chat completion for question 3. So I will do that quickly. So here I created the messages list and I specified the system role and question 3. I then make the call to the function and attach an anonymous function to the promise. Of course, the messages is passed to this function. Now I handle the response. I print the log. I save this answer and print a new line. Okay, let's go and test this. Okay, as you can see here, it's saying please provide more information about what you are referring to, because here in question 3 we have told him to what is the amount of kilocalorie. So here it is just telling us what are you asking about, kilocalorie on what. Okay, so now I will come back to the messages list for question 2. It now has the system role and question 2. Now I will add to it question 1 because I wanted to be aware of question 1. So this is question 1. And also it will need to know the response for question 1. I add the response of question 1. And here is the third role that we didn't know about yet, which is the assistant. It means that last time he sent us a response, this bot response 1, which is the bot response for question 1, is specified with a role assistant. So now the entire history is there. I have the system role, question 1, response to question 1, and question 2. Now I am passing this to messages. This time I expected to be able to specify a proper recipe because question number 2 was all asking for a recipe. Okay, let me test that. A simple recipe that incorporates healthy foods. You can see it new here that I am asking for healthiest food, and here is a recipe that will use the healthiest food that it's specified in question 1. So here in question 2 we specify the system, question 1 answer, question 2, and it was able to maintain the history. Now let's go to the messages for question 3. So here for question 3, I will add the question 1 and its response, and I will also add the question 2 and its response. So as you can see, system role, question 1, the response, question 2, the response, and here question 3. Now if we test this, I expect it to provide the kilocalories in the food or in the recipe that he just created. So let me start this. Okay, so this is the answer of question 1. This is question 2, and it's saying the kilocalorie in this salad. Here is a simple and healthy recipe incorporating these foods or those foods. It knew that it specified foods for us, and now it is creating a recipe for this food. And here the amount of kilocalorie in the recipe can vary on the specific quantities, but now it is trying to provide a rough estimate of 400 to 500 calories, talking about a question 2 answer, which is the recipe. So now you see that we have created a function that takes into account the history when it answers and asks and answers questions from the ChatGPT chat completion model. Thank you now, and we will move to a new lesson.